Howdy and welcome to Moose Podcast 217. Hey, I hope you guys are doing great. Had another good week. Here we are in December and it's whatever number of days until Christmas. Hey, you know, when you're a photographer, every day is kind of Christmas. You get to go out there and take things, unwrap them, shine them up, stick them underneath the tree again. So count your blessings. It's all good. Remember to wear that mask. We'll get through this. We'll keep going. It'll be even better. But thanks for taking time to stop by. Give what I have a listen. Maybe it will help move your photography forward. Also want to thank my good friends at Bedford Camera, bedfords.com. Hey, this coming week, it's all Nikon week. They've got a bunch of free online presentations they're doing. I am not part of it, but there's some good friends who are there. They got some great stuff to offer you, so make sure you check it out. I think you'll find it worthwhile. Hey, I also have a special in-studio guest today, the one, the only, Miss Maggie, who right now is chewing on the cable and trying to unplug the hard drive. Her usual antics. So if there's little glitches, noises, sparks, well, it's not me. It's my good friend Maggie. Well, let's get right to this week's topic, short-term thinking. So back in the day, I was part of a member of a couple of very long-term projects, biological projects. They were based in the San Joaquin Valley, and they were basically working with kangaroo rats and their entire community, from plants all the way up to insects, reptiles, birds. It was a long-term project. It turned out to be the whole thing ended up being the recovery plan, the very first recovery plan for an endangered species that had covered an entire ecosystem and many, many, many species, not just the target species of the kangaroo rat. So we spent many weeks in the field collecting data. I was there documenting it, and in part collecting that data, which is how I got my name on that paper, which is still one of my greatest honors, is being included in part of that. Well, this was back in the mid to late 90s, as all was occurring. Things were different back then, and getting quick answers was starting to be the norm. A lot of the biology and the laws that are passed to protect it are based on politics, not on sound biology. A lot of it, I think, is still that way today. And my mentor, Dr. Williams, would lament many times about the short-term projects. You know, the project we're working on was about 7 years, and all of a sudden, projects were going for 6 months, and within 6 months drawing conclusions in which science was to be based and policies to be set. And all that short-term projects, that 6 months, if you spend any time with a critter photographing them for just 6 months, you know how much changes. And you continue on, you realize the second 6 months, what you saw the first 6 months, a lot of it doesn't repeat. Yet these short-term projects exist to, a lot of the times, fulfill mandates, be it property development, what have you. To get to the point, you know, my mentor would always say, God, this short-term thinking is going to be the death of us. Well, you know, there's been a number of things that have happened in the last month working with certain photographers that, well, their short-term thinking, I think, is going to be the death of their photography. I'm not sure where or when it started that photography would be a instant process. I'm not talking about Polaroid. I'm talking about you go and you find a technique. You master a technique in a short time, and then all your photographic problems are solved. Or, you know, you buy that one camera body and your problems are solved. I mean, yes, the Nikon D1 was a great camera. When it came out in 1999, it was one of a kind. And when it came to digital, it solved all the problems because it was it. Today, even though I have files from the D1 I still share and stuff, and I put out there, and the photographs are still relevant, it's not the camera I'm going to pick up to go and shoot for a lot of reasons. And that's kind of the basis of electronics. None of them are, I mean, it's since the very beginning, no matter what you want to look at, electronics are quickly evolving and improving and making things better. And if we sit there and embrace that, we can improve our photography. So what's the point of all this? Well, these couple of photographers were very anxious to get on with their project. And they were, and I hope they're listening, had very short-term thinking that they could do this and that, and boom, they're done, and it'd be successful, and they'd be rich and famous. And that was really, I think, their goal, is that fame and fortune, rather than actually putting in the time to really create a very powerful story. They have I think, a great outline and a great thread and a really good purpose. But boy, so the short-term thinking, we can apply it to many different aspects of photography, and you've probably seen examples of it. You could call some of them fads. I'm sure you've been around long enough that you've seen some of the many fads that have come and gone, some of the software that has come and gone, that it is short-term thinking. And in that short term that it was in our sphere on our radar screen, did it really help us move our photography forward? So the basics, right? We're talking about f-stop, shutter speed, light, communicating. There are lots of different ways in which we try to get through that. And a lot of them are short-term thinking. We'll fix it in post. The only problem with that is that in the long term, when it comes to learning light, you can't fix it in post. The only time you can do that is when you sit there and you put your time in and learn it at the camera. Now, I'm trying to figure out how I can say this without being really downright kind of rude, because that wouldn't get us anywhere. But this photography gig, photographers tend not to want to get the time in to actually reap the rewards that are waiting for them. They want them on a short-term basis. And the problem is the actual photography that's generated during this period of their impatience is not long-standing. It doesn't keep up with, I don't want to say current times, but doesn't keep the attention of the viewer. Great example, I think, of what I'm trying to say is Ansel Adams. Here's a photographer who put in his time. There wasn't any one photograph that he rushed out to get, right? I mean, he sat there and he put a lot into getting that photograph, getting the right place, getting the right time, thinking about exposure, all those very important elements, especially back then when the world of the wet darkroom. And then he would sit there and he thought about, at the point of capture, what he was going to have to do to print that image to bring out that story. And the amazing part to me is that even though he had all that, it was later on some of his students, his apprentices, who revisited his negatives and reprinted them, did all the work that Ansel put into them, did that come out? And we're talking about years and years here for that image to actually be the one that we really think of and enjoy and love and really want to see. It didn't happen, click, click, I'm done. And look at the longevity of his work. And there's a lot of the great masters from that period that we could go back and look at who you can see went through a lot of time to get the shot, a lot of time to process that shot, and a lot of time sharing that photo. And as time has gone on, there's still photographs we want to enjoy. Another great example of this visual storytelling and where short-term thinking doesn't pay out is Ken Burns. And yeah, Ken Burns is presenting all of his stuff in a film format, in a film method. But look what he's done. I mean, he even has his own way of showing a still image called the Ken Burns, which is that slow pull in or pull out of a photograph to reveal the whole story. That took time. And if you look at his body of work, and a lot of people say it wasn't until the Civil War series came out that people really noticed Ken Burns. He had dozens of films, documentaries prior to that one, where he was refining his talent. He was working on his craft, his storytelling. It didn't happen overnight. It was, if you listen to him, how he does his process, which to me is fascinating, there's no short-term thinking at all in this process. So how can you apply any of this to your own photography and moving photography forward? First and foremost, I'm going to suggest that you, one, give yourself a break. Don't think you have to produce all the time. This day and age of Instagram, where people think they need to post something every day and they need to get all these likes, I think is in some way disturbing to photographers. They are, sorry, Maggie's here yanking on my pants. Anyway, I don't think I'm doing a podcast without my pants on. Anyway, this instant, Instagram, if you look at some of the photographers, like myself, yeah, there's some current photographs on there, but a lot of them are photographs that have been around for a little while that, have mellowed in the old wine rack, you could say. They've survived the test of time. They're not a short-term or quick click, but more a thought process. And that's what photography really needs to be, is something that is thought and felt as well as executed. So the long term, there's a continual growth curve, there's a continual passion, there's a continual rewards that come from a body of work. And that's challenging in this day and age. There's no ifs and buts about that. It is very challenging to sit there and put time in on something. We would like to see things quickly. I'm no different. But it comes with doing it a lot. You realize that often the very first knee-jerk reaction is not the best one for the situation. So short-term thinking, when it comes to your photography, I highly recommend that you give yourself the time to think it all through, plan it all through, take the shot, make it happen. That goes from the time you go out to click, and I see what I call them panic photographers. You can see them out there shooting, going bounce, 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 rather than just sitting and thinking and feeling and having it all register and then put the eye to the camera to produce that photograph that will last the test of time. Give yourself and your photography that break, okay? Try that Ansel Adams, Ken Burns kind of approach to it. I think you'll find your photography will improve very quickly when you give it the time to age and mellow. So short-term thinking, it can be something that is the death of your photography. Well, I trust you're out there shooting. Winter in some places is going. In some places, like where I'm here in Montana, we had it for about a week, and then it's just been cold. Snow is gone. But hopefully it'll come quickly. Critters are just looking gorgeous because of that temperature and waiting to be photographed. So I hope you're out there with your camera and making every click your story.